They called it the Pact, a galaxy-wide agreement of peace forged between 14 dominant species, held together by trembling strings of diplomacy and fear. Humanity, new blood in the stars, was offered a seat at the table, but never real power. The aliens smiled with their tentacles, beaks, and plasma-lined eyes, but their laws were cages, their peace a leash. For a while, Earth played along. We built outposts, traded technology, nodded at their laws, we adapted. But adapting wasn't survival, it was submission. That truth hit Commander Rhys Banner the moment he stood in the ruins of Outpost Turnus 4, watching smoke rise where civilians had lived. No warning, no declaration of war, just a sanctioned raid by the Droval Dominion, one of the Pact's senior species. Over 500 humans, slaughtered in cold efficiency. Men, women, kids, no survivors, no explanation. Banner wasn't a diplomat. He was a former orbital infantryman turned off-world commander, and right now he was staring down at a child's charred shoe half buried in rubble, jaw clenched, knuckles white. "This wasn't a mistake," his second-in-command growled beside him. "They meant this." "No shit," Rhys muttered. He crouched, picked up the shoe, turned it over once, then tossed it aside. "The Pact will call it strategic misfire. They'll send apologies, maybe sanctions." "And we'll take it?" Rhys didn't answer. They all knew the game. Humanity, the fast-breeding underdogs, had become too ambitious, colonizing border worlds, militarizing moon stations, developing AI beyond limits the Pact set. The Droval hated us for it, so they tested us, attacked one of our minor outposts to see if we'd roll over. The answer should have been diplomacy, a speech, negotiations. But what the galaxy didn't understand, what they never understood, was that humanity never stayed leashed for long. Later that night, the Council convened, remote link, high orbit, cold faces on glowing screens, generals, EarthCorp execs, old-world presidents whose words had no spine. "We cannot jeopardize our standing within the Pact," one said. "We must demand reparations, not war," another added, sipping wine on a private station light years away. Rhys watched in silence. Then someone asked him, "Commander Banner, you're the closest to the site. Your report?" He leaned forward slowly, voice gravel-lined. "It wasn't an accident. They targeted civilians, burned them alive. Kids, too. If we don't answer, they'll do it again." "War is not—" "It already started." Silence. "Humanity's better when it's underestimated," Rhys continued. "That's always been our edge. We fight dirty. We don't forget. We out-adapt. If you won't act, then let me off the leash." The Council refused. Of course they did. But command structures were thin on the edge of space, comms delayed, hierarchies blurred, and Rhys wasn't built to wait. Back at the base, he gathered his black ops crew, 9 men, 2 women. Former Earth infantry, dishonorably discharged, court-martialed, reassigned. The kind of soldiers who fought like beasts because life never gave them another way. They followed Rhys because he never lied, and he never asked what you used to be. He stood in front of them in the hangar bay, beneath the glow of the ship's open jaw. His voice was steady. "They burned our people alive," he said. "The Pact watched. The Droval will expect more speeches." "What are we giving them instead?" one man asked. Rhys smiled. "Vengeance. No politics, no parades, no recorded broadcast. Just one dropship, one destination, a Droval war cruiser stationed on the outer rim, full of soldiers drunk off the victory of Turnus 4. They didn't expect humans to strike first. They forgot what we do when peace fails. The dropship shuddered as it left the gravity well of the outpost's broken orbit. Rhys Banner stood strapped near the rear, silent, arms crossed over his armored chest. The hum of the ship's engines filled the compartment, a low growl that matched the tension in every soldier's chest. 12 warriors, no insignia, no formal orders. Just the last line between vengeance and silence. The man sitting across from him was Greaves, massive, thick-shouldered with a permanent scowl etched into his jawline like it had been welded on in a brawl. Greaves had served time for combat misconduct after a massacre on Lunaris Prime. He'd saved 6 Marines and killed 30 pirates. The problem? None of those pirates were supposed to die. Politically sensitive targets. Greaves had never cared. To his left was Nico, their sniper. Quiet as a grave, pale as a corpse, and twice as cold. They said he could hold his breath for 3 minutes while lining up a kill shot. Probably true. He hadn't spoken since they left Turnus 4, just sat there polishing his rifle like it was a holy relic. Each one of them was broken in a different way. Broken by orders, by war, by abandonment. But Rhys didn't need perfect. He needed hungry. He stood as the red lights flashed overhead. "Final approach," the pilot's voice crackled. "Visual on the Droval cruiser. She's just sitting there." Rhys turned towards the team. "You know the mission." "Confirm it anyway," Greaves growled. Rhys nodded. "We drop. Get in quiet. Plant charges at the reactor core and the bridge support. If they catch us, we don't stop until the whole damn cruiser's in pieces." "What about survivors?" asked Rain, their demo expert. Short, wiry, with eyes that never blinked quite right. "We're not here for prisoners." No one argued. This wasn't a mission. It was a message. The Droval cruiser floated like a monolith against the stars, 6 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and shields that could flatten a continent. But tonight, it was vulnerable, relaxed, arrogant. The humans had never struck back. The outer perimeter was thin, standard patrol drones, blind spots in the sensor nets, a single maintenance dock used for waste and resupply. Rhys's crew came in low, below the station's shield arc, hidden in the debris field from an ancient mining war. The dropship's stealth systems weren't cutting edge. They were stolen. Earth Command didn't issue gear for unsanctioned revenge raids. But what they had was enough. They coasted into the maintenance dock. No alarms, no lights, just the whine of magnetic clamps as the dropship latched onto the hull. Masks went on, rifles checked, charges armed. Rhys keyed the door, and the airlock opened with a hiss like a dragon waking up. They moved like ghosts. No chatter, no slips. Greaves took point, silent as a predator, weapon sweeping corridors carved from black alloy. The Droval didn't build for comfort. They built for control. The halls were narrow, lit with sickly purple lights that pulsed like veins. "2 guards," Nico murmured in Rhys's earpiece. 1 floor above, voices in a strange, clicking tongue. Droval officers. Bored. Rhys gave a hand signal. "Wait, watch." They passed. The team moved again. Past storage rooms, sleeping chambers, communication arrays. Then, Rain's voice, low and grim. "Found it. Reactor access shaft." The door was sealed. Level 4 encryption. Rhys glanced at Rowan. The demo expert grinned. "Give me 90 seconds. He dropped to his knees, tools in hand. Sparks flew. Panels came off. Circuits rewired. Rhys's eyes flicked between hallways. So far, they were ghosts. But ghosts get seen. A low beep. The door hissed open. Rain smiled. "Trick is, you gotta think like a coward. These guys don't expect visitors." Inside, the core pulsed. a column of roiling energy encased in shimmering plasma fields, humming like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. They'd planted 6 charges, 2 on the core, 2 on the support stabilizers, and 2 more near the control matrix. All synced, all quiet. Nico's voice cut in. Movement on the bridge deck. They're talking about Turnus 4. Rhys blinked. Translate? Nico had implants, crude but functional. They're laughing, calling us feral. One of them says we cried over soft spawn casualties. Greaves muttered, I'm going to rip their fucking heads off. Rhys tapped his comm. Bridge team, on me. They split into 2 squads. Rhys took Greaves, Nico, and Alan, former reconnaissance turned knife fighter. The rest stayed with Rain to finish planting the last charges and secure the escape route. They moved fast, up 3 levels, ducking behind bulkheads, shadowing the patrols. The bridge wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. No one expected humans to come charging into the beating heart of a capital ship like it was their goddamn living room. Inside, 8 Droval officers sat around a circular platform, laughing in their harsh, guttural tongue. Their translator screens showed a report on Turnus 4. Photos, heat maps, corpses. Corpses. Human corpses. Displayed like trophies. Greaves stepped forward first. His rifle barked once, twice. A Droval captain's chest exploded, scattering organs across the console. Screams erupted. Alan moved like wind, his blade flashing in silence as he slit a throat before the alien could reach the alarm. The others panicked, cowards in gold-trimmed armor. Nico dropped 2 with clean shots between the eyes. One tried to run. Rhys tackled him, drove his fist into the alien's mouth, crushing cartilage and bone. The Droval thrashed, bleeding from every orifice. Rhys leaned close, breathing hard. You killed children, he hissed. The alien gurgled. Rhys jammed his knife into its throat. The room was quiet now. The bridge flickered with warning lights. Blood on every panel. Alarms finally began to sound. Too late. Rhys keyed his comm. Bridge secured. Prepare for extraction. Copy, came Rain's voice. But we've got company. Define company. About 60 armed Droval. They're heading this way. Greaves grinned. Now we're talking. They barricaded the bridge, set remote turrets. Nico set a kill zone. Long corridor, 1 entrance, total slaughter. He took the highest vantage point he could find. Get to the extraction point, Rhys told the others. Nico and I will buy time. The aliens came in waves, roaring, firing plasma bursts, filling the air with the stink of ozone and blood. Nico's rifle cracked over and over. Rhys fought like a man possessed, controlled, brutal, without fear. When the aliens breached the bridge, he triggered the fallback charges. The hallway exploded in flame. He and Nico ran. They reached the lower level just as Rain opened the final door to the maintenance dock. Move! Rhys shouted. The team sprinted into the dropship, Greaves dragging Alan, wounded but breathing. Charges? Rhys asked. Rain held up the detonator, primed and ready. The dropship detached just as the first Droval gunships arrived. Plasma shots screamed past them, lighting the void with chaotic light. But they were out. Gone. And behind them, the Droval war cruiser. Exploded. Not in silence. In fury, the shockwave rippled through the stars, fire and debris scattering like shattered pride. Rhys watched it from the viewport, arms folded, blood on his cheek. That was for Turnus 4, he said. No one replied. They didn't need to. 2 days later, across the galaxy, the Pact convened in emergency session. The Droval demanded retribution. They called it terrorism, an attack on peace, a betrayal. But the footage spread faster than any lie. The laughing Droval officers, the human corpses, the quiet precision of Reese's team, the explosion. Other species watched. Some were shocked, others impressed. Because for the first time, humanity didn't beg. It struck back. And now the galaxy realized something terrifying. Peace had failed. And humans, unleashed, angry, unshackled, had just shown them what came next. 3 days after the Droval warcruiser exploded into a sunless flame, the galaxy began to fracture. At first, the media covered it cautiously. Controlled outlets on Citadel Prime called it an unfortunate escalation. Paxcast referred to it as an unauthorized human strike. The Union voice whispered about extremist elements, but none of them could erase the footage. None could deny the message. The Droval's arrogance had invited a response, and humanity had responded like a wounded apex predator, without mercy, without hesitation. In the darkest corners of the galactic network, the raw, unedited version of the raid spread like wildfire. Reese Banner, his jaw clenched in blood, dragging a dying Droval across the deck. Nico's silent, lethal precision. The sound of Greaves laughing under gunfire. It wasn't just a strike, it was defiance. And that kind of defiance, it didn't just make enemies, it made allies. On the Outer Rim, in the old mining colonies of the Egris Belt, human workers held rallies. Not peaceful ones. They burned the Droval flags, refused to report to alien overseers. A group of settlers on Jericho 7 took over an entire relay station and declared it sovereign Earth territory. No one had seen that much unity since Earth's post-collapse decade. Back on Earth, protests erupted across the megacities. Civilians demanded the council resign for allowing the massacre on Turnus 4, for bending the knee to a pact that never protected them. The old politicians tried to calm the people. They were met with bricks and Molotovs. In the shadows, Earth's military council held an emergency session beneath the Arctic complex, deep underground, away from the Pact's surveillance. 6 generals, 2 fleet commanders, 1 ghost. The last was Reese Banner, projected in grainy hollow, armor still scuffed, dried blood around his temple. He hadn't slept. Didn't need to. "You disobeyed direct orders," said Admiral Harkon, his voice shaking between rage and disbelief. "You jeopardized everything we built with the Pact." "No," Reese replied coolly. "I burned down what was already failing." "You think this helps us? You've started a war." Reese didn't blink. "They started it. Turnus 4 was the trigger. You just didn't have the stomach to pull back." "Don't pretend this was noble," another snapped. "You and your team are criminals now. You've made humanity a target." Reese leaned forward. "We've always been a target. We were just too busy groveling to notice." The room fell silent. Finally, General Corwin, a man with one eye and a spine of iron, spoke. "And what now, Commander? What's your plan? Because whether we like it or not, the galaxy just saw you as our front man." Reese's expression hardened. "Then it's time we act like we deserve the spotlight." Meanwhile, far beyond Earth, in the depths of the Nefari quadrant, the Droval weren't sitting idle. High Commander Vezkar paced the throne room bridge of his flagship, the Vox Ultor, a behemoth that made the destroyed cruiser look like a toy in comparison. His mandibles clicked in irritation. His pride was wounded deeper than the ship's lost systems. Never in recorded Droval history had prey dared strike first. "They broadcasted it," he snarled to his elite guard. "They celebrated it. These humans, vermin, mammals, they humiliated us." His second-in-command, Ekatol, flinched as he responded. The council is torn. Some want war, others suggest diplomacy. Diplomacy? Vezkar turned sharply. With apes. Ekatol lowered his gaze. Prepare the purge fleets. No more colonies, no more alliances. We burn Earth. Then we erase every outpost, every trace. High Commander, the Pact. The Pact is weak. If they wanted peace, they should have stopped the humans. Back on the fringe of Allied space, Reese sat inside a retooled freighter orbiting a derelict station. Off-grid, illegal, and perfect. His team had grown. The footage of the raid had made him infamous among rogue units, veterans, and those long ignored by the Earth Command. Greaves leaned on a console nearby, watching the reports come in. Droval fleets are mobilizing. No more cloak and dagger, he said. Looks like they're done playing politics. Reese stood, silent. Nico entered the room next, throwing a holodisc on the table. More messages. A dozen squads from Egris and Tyrant systems want to join. Former recon, rogue engineers, and even a few exiled pilots. We've got volunteers. Then we build a resistance, Reese said without pause. A resistance? Greaves asked, raising an eyebrow. You planning to run this like a rebellion? No, Reese said darkly. I'm planning to make sure Earth never bows again. He turned to the rest of the room, a mix of weathered faces and new recruits, men and women who'd been burned, forgotten, or ignored. You all saw what they did on Turnus 4, Reese said. That wasn't war, that was extermination, and if they could get away with it once, they'll do it again. They will do it again, Alan muttered, still walking with a limp but back on his feet. Reese nodded. We won't stop them by talking. We won't stop them by waiting. We stop them by reminding the galaxy who the hell we are. He picked up a data slate, pulled up star maps, marked weak points in Droval supply lines, gas relay stations, ammunition carriers, outposts. We hit them where they think they're safe. We hurt them in places they can't defend. No planets, no civilians, just their pride, their power, their war machine. You think Earth's going to back us? Nico asked. I think Earth's got no choice but to pretend they didn't train us. Greaves laughed. That's cold. That's survival. A week later, the resistance struck again. An unmanned Droval supply vessel exploded outside the Voltraxis belt. The media labeled it an accident. It wasn't. Then a fuel depot in Sector 4A went dark. A crew of 10 rogue engineers from Earth's mining colonies had slipped inside. No casualties, but the entire sector stalled. Millions of credits in losses. The Droval blamed pirates. They knew better. Inside Vezkar's chambers, rage boiled over. They multiply, he hissed, claws gouging the steel table before him. Every time we cut one head, 3 more grow. Ekatol watched silently as Vezkar stared at the footage. The faces of the resistance, human, hard, defiant. They have no empire, he muttered. No throne world. No grand fleets, and still they spread. They spread, Ekatol echoed carefully, because they are desperate. No, Vezkar said, turning slowly. They spread because they are angry. And anger is harder to kill than armies. In the following days, the Pact began to fray. The Corithi Republic condemned the Droval strikes and called for a ceasefire. The Filari traders quietly cut off their supplies to Droval fleets. Even the cold-blooded Xyrix hive mind sent probes to Earth, not to threaten, but to study. The humans had done what no one expected. They shattered the illusion of Droval invincibility. And Reese Banner? He became a name whispered in alien bunkers, printed on outlaw banners, carved into prison walls. He wasn't a commander anymore. He was a symbol. But not everyone on Earth agreed. Inside the Arctic complex, the Council panicked. They saw their grasp on peace slipping. They sent covert kill orders, labeled Reese and his team as war criminals, denounced them on every official channel. But soldiers don't listen to traitors. When one of their own, Captain Terrell, a decorated Earth Navy officer, was ordered to shoot down a rogue resistance ship, he refused, defected, brought with him 5 destroyers and their crews. Peace failed, he broadcasted to the galaxy, but Earth didn't. Reese stood on the bridge of his stolen freighter, watching the incoming fleet signatures. 5 Earth Navy destroyers, hundreds of soldiers ready to fight, not because they were told, but because they believed. Greaves stepped up beside him. So, what now? Reese didn't take his eyes off the viewport. Now, he said, we stop being prey. The sky above Tyros 6 burned red. Not with sunset. With war. The Droval counterstrike came faster than anyone expected. Intelligence guessed weeks. They took only 4 days. Reese Banner stood on a ridge outside the colony settlement as explosions rocked the horizon. The forward radar stations had already gone silent. Then came the long-range comms. Gone. Cut in seconds. The Droval weren't just retaliating. They were broadcasting a message. No mercy, no rules. Status? Reese barked into his comm. Crackling. Then Greaves' voice. Second wave coming in. Orbital cannons are down. They're hitting from low orbit now, dropping heavy walkers. Civies are trapped. Where? Sector 9. We've got some militia, not enough. Reese cursed under his breath. His jaw was tight, eyes scanning the chaotic mess below. Pillars of smoke coiled upward from craters where once stood homes, warehouses, clinics. Tyros 6 wasn't a military hub. It was a settlement of engineers, terraformers, families. But it was human. That was enough for the Droval. Prep the dropships, he ordered. I'm going in. Nico appeared behind him, rifle in hand, helmet on. You going to charge into walker fire with no armor support again? Reese smirked faintly. Worked last time. Nico didn't smile. You're going to get killed. Then stay close. Sector 9 was hell. Buildings crumbled under the weight of shelling. The air was thick with smoke and plasma dust. Screams echoed through broken comms. Civilians ran from streets torn open like fresh wounds. And the Droval walkers, 4-legged mechanical beasts towering 2 stories high, moved methodically, leveling anything human-built. Reese's ship broke atmosphere like a falling knife, thrusters screaming, anti-air fire chasing it the whole way down. He didn't wait for landing. The ramp dropped mid-hover, and Reese jumped. Armor hit dirt. He rolled, came up firing. A plasma round from his carbine sliced through the knee joint of a Droval walker. Sparks burst from the joint. The machine shuddered, stumbled. Greaves's missile slammed into its chest a moment later, finishing it off in a fireball that sent debris screaming across the streets. Banners on the ground, someone shouted. Militia, ragtag farmers with pulse rifles and repurposed mining suits, rallied at his position. He didn't ask for names. He didn't need ranks. He pointed. That building. Civies are holed up inside. We cover their escape. Form a shield wall. Nothing gets past. Yes, sir! Another walker came into view. Then 2 more. Reese reloaded. They want to make us examples. Nico landed beside him, sniping through the smoke. Then let's show them what kind of example humans can be. 3 hours of brutal fighting followed. They held the line with grit and rage and nothing else. No reinforcements, no orbital support. Just Reese's unit and whoever still had breath in their lungs. One walker collapsed when Rain, bleeding from the ear, climbed onto it, ripped open the top hatch, and dropped 2 grenades inside before jumping off. Another fell to Nico's precise rifle work, each shot finding a weak point, like he wasn't just sniping, but dismantling. They didn't win. Not really. But they survived. The last walker pulled back. Droval dropships retreated, not out of fear, but out of confusion. They didn't understand. They dropped elite war machines onto an unarmored colony, and they still lost the street. Later, inside the wreckage of what used to be Tyros 6's command center, Reese pulled the lid off a makeshift ammo crate and sat on it. His armor was scorched, one shoulder plate missing. Blood stained his gloves. Not all of it his. Across from him, Greaves was coughing through smoke, arm in a sling. So, is this victory? Reese shook his head. This is survival. That's all we're doing right now. Rain limped in, grimacing. We've got 5 transport ships still working. We're pulling out civilians now. Estimate? 700 survived. Out of 2,000, Reese muttered, staring at the cracked floor. Greaves slammed a fist into the wall. We should have had defenses, should have had something more than a handful of goddamn pulse rifles. We were never supposed to win, Nico said quietly. Not here, not in the Pact's rules. Reese stood. They picked Tyros because they thought we'd break. He looked out the shattered window at the red-tinted sky. Dropships lifted off with the last of the survivors. But we didn't. Far above, Earth watched in silence. The Council held emergency votes. One faction called for peace talks. Another argued for open war. A third suggested letting Reese die quietly in space and pretending he never existed. But public sentiment was boiling over. Footage of Tyros spread, same as Turnus 4. Only this time, it showed humans fighting back. A video of Reese hauling a screaming child from a burning building went viral in under 6 minutes. Another of Nico dragging a wounded man to safety while shooting a Droval in the face mid-step made its way to underground media circuits. Earth Command couldn't spin that, couldn't deny it. For the first time, citizens weren't asking for peace. They were asking for vengeance. The next blow came from the most unexpected source. Inside the central archives of Pact's Citadel, a sprawling data fortress owned by the Pact, unknown agents triggered a data leak. Thousands of files, all Droval, all damning. The massacre at Turnus 4, sanctioned, Tyros 6, strategic population control. Dozens of other colonies, some never even reported, marked for quiet sterilization. The illusion was shattered. The Droval hadn't just struck in retaliation. They had been planning humanity's slow extermination for years. The Pact? They knew. Reese watched the leaks unfold from his base aboard the Drifter's Fall, now upgraded from a freighter to a full-scale command vessel. He stood silent as the data played. His team around him, bloodied, exhausted, but very much alive. Greaves broke the silence first. They were never going to let us grow. Nico stared at the screen. We were the threat. The only species that didn't kneel. Reese nodded. Then we stopped kneeling. He turned to the map display. Droval supply chains, Alliance strongholds, critical communication relays. Start Phase 2, he ordered. What's Phase 2? Rain asked. Reese's voice was ice. We make them bleed. The next series of raids hit fast and hard. Human resistance cells, once scattered and disorganized, now moved with purpose. They hit Droval trade routes, disabled weapons manufacturing stations, crippled orbital docks. And Reese's crew? They struck the heart, infiltrated a black site science facility in the Natari Void where human prisoners were experimented on. Liberated 50 survivors, leaked everything. It was no longer a war for survival. It was a war for justice. Across the galaxy, species once silent now whispered about choosing sides. Some stayed quiet, but a few made the first move. The Falari Republic, longtime neutral traders, closed all ports to Droval ships. The Xyrix hive mind sent a single, cryptic message to Earth. Your fury is noted. We observe. Not quite an alliance, but not opposition either. It was a start. Back on Earth, the Council cracked under pressure. General Corwin went rogue, took command of 3 Earth Fleet battalions, and defected to Reese's cause. His message was broadcast live. Peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from defiance. Commander Reese Banner stands for humanity, and I stand with him. That same day, 2 high-ranking council members resigned. The third vanished. In the cold vacuum of space, aboard the Drifter's Fall, Reese met with Corwin in person. The general, aged but unbent, saluted first. I should have pulled you back after Turnus, Corwin said. I should have backed you from the start. Reese shook his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Corwin stepped aside. I've brought weapons, real ones, railguns, fleet-class shields, AI-assisted targeting systems, and soldiers? 10,000. Volunteers. Reese smiled for the first time in weeks. You just gave humanity its army. But far away, in the scorched remains of Tyros 6, High Commander Vesgar stood among the ashes. He bent down, picked up a half-burned human doll, held it in his clawed hand. A soldier approached behind him. Sir, intel confirms the human commander escaped. Resistance is spreading. Vesgar stared at the doll a moment longer, then crushed it to powder. Let it spread. Sir. Vesgar turned slowly, eyes glowing with hate. When the fire spreads far enough, he said, everything burns. War never follows a script. Victory on Tyros 6 had ignited something, yes, but Reese Banner knew better than to let hope cloud his instincts. The Droval were still out there, bleeding, watching, plotting. He stood alone in the command chamber aboard the Drifter's Fall, staring down at the holomap. New red markers had appeared. Droval convoys destroyed, military stations sabotaged, even whispers of species defecting from the Pact altogether. The momentum was shifting. But shifts come with consequences. Rowan entered, tension in his shoulders. We got a signal. Weak scrambled through 5 relays. Origin, Lambda Rift. Reese turned. Civilian? Rain shook his head. Military. Code matches one of our deep scout units. Last seen, out near Iliad sector, Reese's eyes narrowed. Iliad was empty space, nothing but black rocks and decaying satellites. What's it say? Rain hesitated. It says we've got a traitor. Reese watched the recording in silence. A shaky video feed. One of their own, helmet cracked, blood down the side of his cheek. The man's voice shook through static. If you're seeing this, we were set up. We followed intel to a supposed Droval fuel depot, but it was a trap. No guards, no fuel. Just one of ours. Kellen, he was waiting for us. He'd disabled the extraction ship before we got there. He looked me in the eyes and said, we never had a chance. We're just buying Earth time. Then he opened fire. The message ended there. Greaves was already pacing when the lights came back up. I knew something was wrong with that bastard. Kellen's not wired like us. Always talking about the greater good like a damn council puppet. Rain was shaking his head. He led 3 raids for us, saved civilians, built our commnet in the outer fringe. Why flip now? Reese's jaw was tight. Because someone got to him. Nico entered last, quiet, always watching. I pulled the background logs, he said. Kellen received an encrypted data burst 6 days ago. Origin, Earth Command, Level 6 override. Rain cursed. So the Council's still trying to pull strings. They're losing control, Nico added, and they're scared. Reese didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, it was with the gravity of a commander who'd buried too many already. Get me everything we have on Kellen, every outpost he's visited, every soldier he's spoken to in the last week. If there's rot inside our ranks, we cut it out now. Reese and his team traced Kellen's last movement to a shadow relay on Bastion 3, an abandoned human listening post deep in asteroid space. No official logs placed him there, but black box data told the truth. Kellen had docked, stayed 42 minutes, and left again. Reese took a squad in person. The station was dead. No lights, no warmth, just the hum of standby systems and the stale stench of betrayal. They moved through the corridors in silence. Rain scanned the walls. Power grid's intact. Someone rerouted it. Greaves kicked open a sealed hatch. Inside, data cores, still glowing. And then they found it, a transmission beacon, still warm, set to send out a single encoded burst every 12 hours. Bursts to Earth, but not to the Council, to a Black Ops Earth Naval Unit, Omega Division. You've got to be kidding me, Greaves muttered. They're still operating? I thought they were disbanded after the Proxima affair. Officially, Reese said, but Omega never answered to officials. They cracked the message logs. It was worse than expected. Kellen hadn't just flipped. He'd been an embedded observer from the start. Reporting back on Reese, tracking cell movements, coordinating with a shadow fleet orbiting just outside Pact territory. His last message read, Reese Banner is no longer under control. The myth is growing faster than the man. Recommend termination protocol. Rain looked at Reese, stunned. They want to erase you. Reese didn't respond. He stared at the message for a long time, then turned away. Tell me we can trace his current position. Nico tapped his visor. Intercepted a shortwave ping 2 hours ago. Kellen's meeting with someone on Vera Station. Someone? Droval Envoy. Greaves swore under his breath. He's not just betraying us, he's trading us. Reese nodded once. Then let's show him what we trade in. Vera Station sat at the edge of an asteroid belt, half-commercial, half-black market, the kind of place where you could buy a nuke, a memory wipe, or your own grave in the same hour. Reese and his team moved in under the guise of smugglers. No banners, no insignia. Inside, the station buzzed with heat and neon. Traders, mercenaries, outlaws, all packed shoulder to shoulder, half of them armed, all of them dangerous. Reese walked with purpose. Not through them, but into them. He wasn't here to hide. He was here to end something. Rain fed him the signal trace. Kellen's in the West Wing, room 82 Delta. There's movement inside, at least 3 heat signatures. They moved like hunters, breached the door fast. Smoke. Screams. One Droval ambassador dead before he could lift a weapon. A second tried to run. Nico dropped him with a shot to the back of the neck. Kellen was the last. He stood by the window, hands up, a pistol lying untouched on the table beside him. He didn't beg. He didn't run. He smiled. I figured it would be you, he said to Reese. You're a traitor, Reese said flatly. Kellen shrugged. I'm a realist. You think this ends in human victory? You're building a myth out of corpses. And you sold us out? I kept the fight alive. Earth is preparing, Reese. Quietly, carefully. You? You're fire, uncontrolled, unmanageable. You burn too fast, too hot. You'll leave nothing behind but ash. Reese stepped forward. And what do you think I am now? A mistake. Reese pulled his sidearm and shot him in the stomach, not the head. He let Kellen fall slowly, gasping, choking on blood. You don't get to die clean, Reese whispered. You don't get to fade out like a martyr. You get to bleed like the rest of us. Kellen's body hit the floor, twitched once, then stopped. Greaves exhaled slowly. That's one less snake. Nico stepped to the window. But not the last. 2 days later, the Droval retaliated, harder than ever before. They hit a neutral colony, Balthos Reach, population 8,000, no military presence, no resistance, just families, miners, and children. The Droval used incendiary weapons, burned it to the bedrock. No survivors. The galaxy howled, not just humans. Even neutral species condemned it. The Falari sent a war fleet to blockade Droval territory. The Karithi Republic openly broke Pact agreements. Vezkar had overplayed his hand. But he didn't care. Inside the war chamber aboard the Vox Ultor, he stood before a massive star map and pointed to Earth's position. "I don't want colonies," he growled. "I don't want symbols. I want their home, their cradle, their planet." "But sir," Ektal said nervously, "attacking Earth directly, that would be war with every human faction, even the Council." Vezkar bared his teeth. "Then they will finally choose sides." Back on the Drifter's Fall, Rhys watched the footage of Balthos Reach in silence. There were no words, just fire. Greaves stood beside him, jaw clenched. "What's our move?" Rhys stared a moment longer, then turned away. "We stop defending," he said. "We go offensive. We cripple their war lines. We destroy their fuel, their command ships, their morale." He pointed to the fleet logs. "We hit the Vox Ultor." Everyone stared. "That's suicide," Rain said. "It's a fortress, 3 kilometers long, a personal fleet. It's their command center." "Exactly," Rhys said. "You cut the head off, the body falls apart." Greaves cracked his knuckles. "Finally." Nico nodded once. "Let's make this personal." Rhys looked at each of them. No uniforms, no medals, just hardened faces, all scarred differently, but all scarred. He spoke calmly. "Enough defense, enough bleeding, enough waiting." He stepped forward. "It's time to remind the galaxy what human fury really looks like." The Vox Ultor wasn't just a warship. It was a symbol. It represented everything the Droval believed about themselves. Invincible, dominant, untouchable. 3 kilometers of living armor, plasma batteries powerful enough to crack moons, and a command structure embedded deep in its core, like a heart that never stopped beating. And Rhys Banner was going to cut it out. In the central war room aboard the Drifter's Fall, the atmosphere was steel-wired and thick with unspoken tension. Everyone knew what this mission meant. It wasn't another raid. It wasn't a symbol. It was suicide. Rain, the demo expert, leaned over the holo table, frowning. "This is borderline insanity. Do you even know how many defensive satellites this thing has around it?" 37, Nico answered calmly, "and 3 cruisers in orbit, plus 2 escort fleets within jump range." Rain gestured wildly. "So how the hell do we get past all that?" Rhys, quiet until now, stepped forward. He tapped the star map, zooming in on a micro-satellite cluster far from the central system. "Because they're expecting a fleet. They're not expecting a ghost strike." He laid out the plan with brutal simplicity. They'd steal a mining vessel, unarmed, unmarked. Use the orbital mining convoy routes to get within range of the Vox Ultor, then breach the hull from underneath, through its waste purge system, an area barely monitored because it was considered structurally impenetrable. Once inside, they'd split. One team to the engine reactors, the other to the bridge. Plant charges. End it. Rain shook his head. "There's no fallback, no evac. Once we're inside, we either blow the thing or we die on it." Rhys nodded. "That's right." Greaves grinned. "About time." The stolen mining freighter was called Hound's Mercy, a clunky, rusted beast with decompression alarms that sounded more like screaming than warning. Perfect. Ugly enough to avoid suspicion, but large enough to hide 6 resistance fighters in its underbelly. They boarded in silence. No speeches, no grand send-off. Rhys didn't believe in speeches. Not anymore. Inside the cargo bay, Greaves checked his ammo belt. "If I die on this ship," he said, "I want it to be next to something exploding." "You'll die screaming like a child," Rain muttered, wiring his detonators. Better than dying on my knees, Greaves replied. Reese listened, but didn't join the banter. He stood near the viewport, watching the stars stretch and flicker as they approached the drop zone. Every mile closer to the Vox Ultor felt heavier. Not fear. Focus. He thought of Turnus 4, of Tyros 6, of Balthos Reach, burned so clean that even the stone melted. He thought of the Council's silence, of the traitors in Earth's shadow government who whispered about strategic tolerance while children were reduced to ash. They'd all abandoned humanity's soul for a chair at the Pact's table. Reese never wanted the table. He wanted to flip it. The Vox Ultor loomed ahead. Black, angular, monstrous, surrounded by a swarm of blinking satellites like an insect hive protecting its queen. They entered undetected, pretending to be a broken-down freighter looking to dump mining waste. Droval bureaucracy didn't care. They approved the request. Reese's team laughed in their heads. The ship floated into the purge port, drifting gently toward the base of the command ship. They moved fast. Inside environment suits, they cut through the freighter's belly and latched onto the Vox Ultor's underbelly with magnetic clamps. Greaves was first through the breach, slicing a hole into the waste maintenance tunnel. It stank. The air was thick, metallic, and laced with chemical rot. It didn't matter. They climbed inside like rats through a pipeline of death. Inside the Vox Ultor, it was worse. Slick corridors, dull green lighting, automated patrol drones moving in mechanical rhythm. Reese led the group through ventilation shafts and blind corridors, following the internal schematics they'd stolen from a captured engineer 3 weeks earlier. They split at the core junction. Rain and Nico went left, to the engine chambers. Reese, Greaves, and Allen went right, to the bridge. They had 23 minutes. Rain reached the engine chambers first. They'd expected resistance. Instead, they found something worse. Prisoners. Humans. Hundreds of them, stripped, shackled, used as biological batteries to regulate power flow and heat transfer through nerve feedback systems. It was a kind of tech humanity hadn't even considered developing. Rain stared at the wall of faces. Some barely breathing, some already dead. One looked at him. A girl, maybe 15. "No," she whispered. He stepped forward. "We're here to get you out." "No," she said again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was a warning. Then the trap sprung. Droval guards erupted from hidden side vents. 10, then 15, then more. Rain and Nico fired fast and hard, dropping the first wave in seconds. But it wasn't enough. Rowan screamed as a plasma blade sliced across his thigh. He dropped to his knee, blood pouring. Nico dragged him behind a generator, covering him with deadly precision. "We have to blow the core," Rain gasped. "We will," Nico said, slamming a charge onto the reactor wall. "But the kids—" Nico paused, looked back at the shackled humans. Then he stood. "Get ready to run." Rain blinked. "What?" Nico activated his cloak and stepped out into the fray. One by one, he shot the restraints. One by one, the prisoners dropped, crawling toward the exits. He took a round to the chest, still stood, took another, and another. He activated the last charge, turned to Rain, and gave the nod. Then the lights cut out, and the room exploded. At the same time, Reese and Greaves reached the bridge. Bodies everywhere, but no gunfire. They moved through empty corridors, deeper and deeper, until Reese realized the horrible truth. "They're waiting for us." Greaves raised his rifle. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The bridge doors opened. Inside stood High Commander Vezkar, alone, massive, armored, calm. "You came," he said. "How human of you." Reese aimed his weapon. "This ends now." Vezkar chuckled. "You think killing me ends this war?" I think burying you sends a message. Vezkar moved like lightning, lunging with a spear blade. Rhys barely dodged. Greaves fired twice. Both rounds bounced off the alien's armor like rocks against a tank. Rhys threw a flash grenade and charged. They fought brutally. Vezkar wasn't just a strategist. He was a warrior. He tore through Greaves' shoulder with a slash, dropping him. Rhys tackled the beast into a console, drove a combat knife into the gap between his chest plates. "Your fury," Vezkar snarled, choking on blood, "will destroy your people." "No," Rhys said, twisting the blade. "It'll save them." He pulled the trigger. The headless body of Vezkar fell to the floor. Greaves coughed blood. "You killed the son of a bitch." Rhys didn't speak. He planted the charges on the bridge walls and keyed his comm. "This is Rhys Banner. The Vox Altar is going down. Rain, status?" Silence, then crackling. "Nico's gone. We saved some, not all. Reactors rigged." Rhys exhaled. "You have 90 seconds to get out." "Already moving." Rhys lifted Greaves to his feet. "You good?" "Better than him," Greaves growled, kicking Vezkar's corpse. They ran. The corridors turned red as alarms blared. Droval soldiers panicked. The death of their commander had broken the chain of command. Without Vezkar, there was no unity. That was humanity's gift. Kill the center, and the rest forget how to breathe. Rhys and Greaves dove through the breach tunnel seconds before the Vox Altar exploded from the inside. Fire rolled through its length like hell exhaling. Back aboard the Drifter's fall, they counted the names. Nico. Gone. Alan. Dead on re-entry. Rain. Alive, but barely. They didn't hold a ceremony. They sat in the dark, each man holding silence like a weapon. Rhys stood before them finally, bleeding, tired and furious. "We hit the heart," he said. "We killed the architect." "But it cost us everything," Rain whispered. Rhys looked him in the eye. It was worth it. Outside the ship, the wreckage of the Vox Altar drifted in space, glowing like a cursed sun. And across the galaxy, species rose up. The Pact was crumbling. Humanity wasn't begging for peace anymore. It was making war. News of the Vox Altar's destruction shattered the galaxy. It didn't just shake the Droval, it broke them. For 2 centuries, the Vox Altar had been more than a warship. It was an icon, a throne in motion. It was the seat of power from which Vezkar commanded empires, issued extermination orders, negotiated through fear. Now it was ashes, and humans did it. Again. The footage made its way to every corner of the stars, leaked by surviving resistance cells, rogue broadcast stations, and smugglers who'd turned patriot overnight. Rhys Banner standing in the ruins of the bridge. Vezkar's mutilated corpse at his feet. Then the explosion. Caught from orbit, a burning flower of vengeance blooming in space. The galaxy didn't just witness a victory, they witnessed a reckoning. On Earth, panic spread through the Council like fire through dry wheat. Councillor Burneth, chief liaison to the Pact, collapsed on live transmission mid-sentence after stammering, "We had no knowledge of this act of aggression." The remaining members convened in secret, deep beneath the Arctic complex, desperation clawing at their voices. "This cannot be allowed to stand," one shouted. "They've just declared war on behalf of our species without sanction." "The Droval have named Rhys a war criminal," another hissed. "And they're not just threatening retaliation, they're demanding Rhys Banner's head. They want Earth's cooperation in handing him over." A long silence followed. Then someone whispered, "Maybe we should." Councillor Tarn, quiet until now, folded his arms. "He's turned half the galaxy against the Pact, and let's not pretend we ever controlled him. What's one man's life to prevent a planet-wide war?" Councillor Meyer, the last with a backbone, glared at him. "You want to sell out the only soldier winning?" Tarn sneered. "He's winning us a funeral." Meanwhile, In orbit above Tyros 6, aboard the repaired and renamed Vox Slayer, Reese stood at the tactical table with Rain and Greaves. Nico was gone. Alan was gone. Half the team was gone. But they weren't weak. They were sharper now. More focused. Rain's arm was in a sling, burns running down the left side of his face. But his mind hadn't dulled. He tapped at the screen showing Droval fleet movements. After we blew the Vox, their chain of command collapsed across 4 sectors, he said. Some of their colonies are pulling out. Others, well, they're killing their own officers in power struggles. Greaves grinned darkly. Love to see it. Reese didn't smile. He was watching a red marker flashing on the corner of the display. Earth. What's the situation with the homeworld? He asked. Rain hesitated. Mixed. Civilians are rioting in favor of you. Soldiers are split. Half the Navy wants to join us. The other half is standing by the Council's orders. And the Council? Rain's expression soured. Officially silent. Greaves leaned in. Unofficially. They're talking with Droval envoys, peace offers, surrender clauses. They're trying to trade you. Reese stood still, like a statue carved from rage. So they'd rather sell out their own commander than face the storm. Rain didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, Reese stood alone in the observation bay, staring at Earth from orbit. It was beautiful. Still blue. Still breathing. He remembered being a kid. Before the war, before space, before the Pact, lying in the grass and staring at stars that didn't mean anything. Now every one of them had taken a life. You're not thinking of going down there, are you? The voice belonged to Kara. Former Navy intel officer, assigned to the Vox Slayer 2 weeks ago. Sharp eyes, sharper tongue. She'd fought with Reese once, years back. A reconnaissance op gone wrong. They'd lost people. She'd blamed him. Now she was here. You're the only ghost the Council fears more than me, Reese said without turning. Kara walked up beside him. The Council put a bounty on your head. Unofficial, of course. You're worth more dead than alive. Nice to know I finally have value. They'll trade you, Reese. Don't underestimate how desperate they are. He turned to her. Let them come. She studied him for a long second, then said, There's someone on Earth who wants to meet you. Who? A general. Reese raised an eyebrow. Corwin's already with us. Not Corwin. She hesitated, then spoke the name. Elias Banner. Reese blinked, froze. My father's dead. Kara shook her head. Number he went underground 10 years ago. He's been working within Omega Division, but after the Vox Ultor, he sent a message. For you. She handed him a data chip. Reese played it alone. The face that appeared on screen was older, grayer, but unmistakable. His father. A man who'd vanished without a word. A man Reese thought had died in silence. If you're seeing this, you've done something no one else had the guts to do. You hit the enemy where it hurts. You made the galaxy fear humanity again, and for that I'm proud of you. More than you'll ever know. But I didn't stay silent for nothing. I've been working undercover, inside the Council, the Pact, Omega itself, gathering data, exposing weakness, and I've found something, son. Something bigger than even Vaskar. The Droval weren't acting alone. Reese leaned forward. There's another hand behind the war. Something deeper, something older. They've been feeding intelligence to both sides. They want the chaos. They're planning something after the fire dies. I need you to come down. I'll explain everything. But only in person. Only once. The message cut off. Greaves wasn't happy. You're not seriously considering this, are you? Reese sat at the head of the table. Silent. Focused. He's my father. He left you. For a decade. No word. And now he wants a reunion after we put the galaxy on fire? Rain added, "It smells like bait." Kara spoke up. "He's not lying. I've worked with him. He's brutal, cautious, but not a traitor." Greaves shook his head. "Even if he's telling the truth, the Council will kill you the second your boots hit dirt." Reese stood. "Then they'd better be fast." He dropped alone. Not in uniform. Not with an army. Just a plain-clothes drop pod disguised as a civilian freight container. It landed hard in the Mojave wastes. Far from cities. Far from surveillance. He walked 6 miles through sand and silence before he saw the hidden bunker. It opened before he knocked. And there he was. General Elias Banner, his father. The man who taught him how to shoot, how to think, how to never beg. They didn't hug, just looked at each other like mirrors. "I thought you were dead," Reese said. Elias nodded. "You're not the only one." They sat inside the bunker. Sparse, cold, efficient. Elias laid it out. The Droval weren't masterminds. They were soldiers, enforcers. But the war, the push for extinction, that came from higher. A Pact subsect that never showed their face. The Valari, a species wiped from official records, long believed extinct. But they weren't gone. They were manipulating everything. "Why?" Reese asked. "Because chaos clears the board," Elias said. "They want to be the only ones left standing when the galaxy forgets who started it." "And Earth? They want us broken, not destroyed, not now, just shattered enough to never rise again." Reese stood. His voice was cold. "Then we hunt them next." But outside, the Council moved. Drones circled the desert. The moment Reese entered Earth's atmosphere, they'd been alerted. Councillor Tarn smiled as the screen showed coordinates locked. "Terminate the rogue," he ordered. The Mojave wind was thick with silence, dust curling around the broken ground like the breath of a buried god. Reese Banner stood in the bunker's entryway, eyes fixed on the horizon, watching specks grow larger in the afternoon sun. Drop pods. 9 of them. Fast. Black. No insignias. He knew that design. Omega Division kill squads. His father, Elias, stood beside him, rifle slung across his chest, not surprised. "They didn't waste time," he muttered. "They never do," Reese said. "You tipped them off?" Elias didn't flinch. "I'm the one who warned you. I thought they'd try diplomacy. Guess they skipped that part." "Then you underestimated the bastards." Reese's voice was cold, tired of waiting for logic to return to a galaxy that burned it alive. He tapped his comm once. 3 short beeps. A tight band signal sent up to orbit, 1 message only. Backup. Silent. 1 hour. If he was still breathing in 60 minutes, someone would come. If not, it'd be just another forgotten body in Earth's dirt. The first dropship hit the ground with a sonic thump. Dust rolled. 12 Omega troopers disembarked, matte black armor glinting under the sun, faceless helmets locked onto Reese and Elias coordinates. They didn't ask for surrender, didn't call for negotiation. They opened fire. Reese ducked, rolled behind a rock outcrop as plasma chewed through the dirt he'd just stood on. Elias returned fire, dropping 1 trooper with a clean headshot. The body crumpled with the stiff finality of trained men doing their job, even when they were the villains. "This wasn't your council's idea," Elias shouted over gunfire. "This is Tarn. He's been bought." "By the Valari?" Reese growled, returning fire. Elias nodded, diving behind a steel crate. "He's been their puppet for years. They funneled weapons into Omega. They've been inside Earth politics since before the Pact. Every war we've fought, they're the ones who wanted us distracted." Reese fired 3 shots, ducked as a grenade thudded nearby, the blast lifting dirt and rock in a geyser. "How deep?" Reese asked. Elias looked over. Deep enough that even killing him won't fix it. Reese grunted. Then we don't fix it. We burn it. 20 minutes in, they were surrounded. 3 squads, flanking, precision moves, trained by the best because they were the best. Humans killing humans again. Greaves would have laughed at the irony. Nico would have just lined up headshots. Reese had neither now. He bled from a grazing shot to the side, breathing sharp, lungs burning. Elias wasn't doing much better. Old bones weren't built for firefights anymore. Then came the speaker drone. It hovered in low. Counselor Tarn's voice boomed, smug and dripping with self-righteousness. Reese Banner, you've become a symbol of chaos, not salvation, a criminal, a false hero. I gave you a chance to turn back. Now I give you one final offer. Surrender. Stand down. Accept the consequences of what you've done. Reese stood slowly, blood down his side, hand gripped tight around his rifle. He looked at the hovering drone. And then he spat. Right at it. You want to kill me? Come do it yourself. The drone paused, then exploded in sparks. No more talking. 33 minutes into the fight, just as ammo began to run dry and Reese was thinking about how he'd rather die than fall into Omega's hands, something cracked the sky. It wasn't a gunship. It wasn't a drop pod. It was a war cruiser. The Vox Slayer. It screamed into low orbit, tearing through Earth's stratosphere like a knife through wet leather. Its engines howled, casting shadow across the desert. Then came the second sound. Drops, not enemy this time. His people, Greaves, alive. Rain, patched, limping, but full of hate. Kara leading 3 squads of resistance fighters who'd smuggled themselves into orbit when Earth wasn't watching. Greaves landed beside Reese, rifle raised. Miss me? Reese gave a blood-soaked nod. Took your time. Had to kill a council spy on the launch deck, Greaves said, already laying down covering fire. Bastard looked just like one of ours, probably a Volari. Ryan shouted into his comm, flanking left, Sector 3. Drop squads 2 and 4 move now. Kara slid in beside Elias, dragging him behind cover. He's hit bad. He'll live, Reese said. Kara looked at him. You might not. I know. The battle turned fast. Omega troopers weren't ready for the sudden reversal. They thought they were killing a ghost. Instead, they found an army. Greaves personally handled 3 of them in hand-to-hand. One had a blade. Greaves took it, broke the man's visor with his elbow, and buried the knife where the voice box used to be. Rain set up a remote turret that turned the tide in minutes, mowing down 2 squads before they realized it wasn't a malfunctioning drone. And Reese, he hunted, no longer hiding. He moved through the field like a blade in motion, every round precise, every movement fueled by rage earned the hard way. He didn't speak. He didn't yell. He killed, because there was nothing left to say. When the last Omega trooper fell, the battlefield stilled. Greaves limped over, dragging the body of a squad leader. He dropped it at Reese's feet. Tarn's personal guard, still breathing. Reese crouched, ripped the helmet off. The man blinked, pale, young, confused. You know who I am? Reese asked. The soldier nodded weakly. They said, you'd destroy everything. Reese looked him in the eye. They were right. He stood, raised his rifle, and without hesitation, ended him. The storm passed, and for the first time in years, Reese looked up at Earth, not as a home to defend, not as a symbol, but as a battlefield that needed cleansing. Back aboard the Vox Slayer, he stood in the war room, breathing ragged, Elias in a med bay, Kara beside him, Greaves holding ice to his ribs, and Rain rewiring their comms. The council was in chaos. Tarn had gone silent. Rumors said he'd fled the complex. Others said he was dead. The rest of the council fractured, unsure whether to surrender, flee, or join Reese. Rhys Banner didn't care. He sent a message to every Earth station, military command, civilian net. His voice, his face, his truth. This war isn't over. It never was. The Droval are broken, but they were just the mask. Behind them are the Villari, the ones who've been playing gods behind curtains. You've seen what they've done. To colonies, to families, to us. And you've seen what we've done back. We're not victims anymore. We're the reckoning. If you stand with the Council, with silence, with submission, you'll fall with them. If you stand with us, then fight, he ended the message. Kara exhaled. You just declared war on the galaxy's real rulers. Rhys nodded. About time. Greaves laughed, despite the blood on his shirt. So what now, Commander? Rhys stared at the stars. They wanted to make an example of us, he said, but we're still here. We're the species that crawled out of dirt, taught itself how to kill gods, and kept going even when the stars said we shouldn't. We're humanity. He turned, eyes burning, and we're not done yet.